Back to Talk of the Town. We're visiting with Ed McCullough, candidate for mayor. We talked about his background, and now we're going to drill down into some of the issues. The first one you talked about is a culture change at Town Hall. There have been some specific issues you shared about limitations with Town Hall and confrontations with town staff. How would you get that changed?
You know, as a business person, and I am running as a business person, I am the only guy who has started companies, built them up, 75 employees, 125 employees, and I had to make payroll on Friday. The interesting thing is one of the other candidates attempted to appropriate that line and say I had to make payroll on Friday too. But making payroll in a small professional firm with a couple of professionals and a couple of helpers is different than 125 employees. We need someone who has led a service organization of a large number of employees. That is critical as far as the leadership goes. And I'll go back to the town culture. As a small business person, if I had a division and it wasn't working, man, you better go in and the first thing you do is tell the truth, okay? What's wrong? And that is what I did in the very first forum, and I'm happy to say virtually all the other candidates have now jumped on board and acknowledged that there's a culture that needs to change.
It's been fascinating to see how the different messages have evolved over time throughout the thing, and people have adopted, I guess, successful parts of other people's messages to some degree, but I think that there is a pretty universal recognition that town culture, and to their credit, I think the town people are getting it as well.
Well, and the beautiful thing about being in the bike meeting with Charles Cousins and him standing up at the end saying, we're going to make this happen, we're going to help you guys, we're going to work with you. Trust me, it's a vastly, vastly different message. You know, talk to Frank Babel, who is the point guy for the bikes, and ask him how he was treated or what reception he was given 5 years ago. It's vastly different. It has moved miles upon miles. And why did it move? Because the business guy went in and said, look, we got something that's broken and it needs to be fixed, led the conversation. All 6 other candidates jump on board. The message is out there, and it has obviously hit Town Hall. You know, people said, oh gosh, how are you going to work with Town Hall after having said those terrible things? I never said terrible things about individuals that I believe that the people at Town Hall would love to be part of a team that is positive, that is pro-business, that is pro-environment, that gets things done, that adds value to our economy, to our quality of life. I believe everybody wants to go home at the end of the day and feel good about what they have achieved. I'm looking to go in and take the handcuffs off those guys. I will rewrite the LMO. The LMO is broken, and I will rewrite it so that it protects the environment, it protects our quality of life, but it also takes the handcuffs off and permits reasonable business to be conducted on the island.
Well, the good news is just the virtue of the campaign has shifted that culture. I think the momentum is already beginning to move in that direction. Another thing the campaign has done has focused community attention on the fact that we really are in danger of losing the heritage. And I think people were just sort of lulled into, oh no, it'll really never happen. But enough people are talking about, you know, we better get behind this thing, and you have some plans for doing that.
Well, it gets back to leadership, and it gets back to the point person, and it gets back to who is the individual that you send out there as your leader into the community, into the business community, to garner the support and bring back the sponsor, bring back the investors in the mall at Shelter Cove. I'm going to tell you a quick story from the tipping point from Malcolm Gladwell,
Love Gladwell,
where he says, okay, you are in a box, you're in a crisis, you're in a situation where, let's just say, you're stuck and you have to break out, you have to hit the tipping point. And he says the absolute #1 ingredient in the tipping point, you know, in our breaking out of our box and finding a sponsor for the heritage, is you have to have a person that he refers to as the connector. And he tells the story, you know, the night of Paul Revere's ride, nobody knows there were 2 guys that went out. The other guy's name was William Dawes. And William Dawes went one way and Paul Revere went the other way. And when they came back, Dawes came back by himself, had nobody with him, and Paul Revere had thousands of people, and he started a revolution. We need a connector who comes back from his visits to the business community with an army of sponsors, with an army of investors, and it's so key that it has to be someone who is a connector. Who's a connector? You know, Paul Revere belonged to 8 revolutionary groups. He was a silversmith. He was an advocate of the theater. He belonged to 3 or 4 social. I mean, he knew everything, everyone, excuse me. And, you know, you look at me. I was on the TV show for 8 years. I started the Bluffton Farmers Market. I started 2 different companies. I went out and got the land for the Boys and Girls Club. I mean, it goes on and on and on. I coached Little League. I coached soccer. You know, the touches that I have throughout the community, they're just infinite. And so when I look at myself, I'm going to make this really clear and not to be too presumptuous, but when I look at myself and I look at the other candidates, I think Paul Revere, William Dawes.
Well, there it is. So marketing is a big thing, and they're talking about word of mouth marketing only goes so far. And when we're talking about marketing the whole island, the Heritage is one big tool in doing that, but there's big talk about giving the Chamber of Commerce more funding somehow from somewhere. What do you think about that?
Oh, we absolutely need to market the island more. When I managed 44 regimes, we always took a look at spending cash and we said, is this an investment upon which we will earn a return, or is this an expense where once it's spent, it's gone and we're not going to see anything coming back from it? We will get a return on investment by investing additional dollars in the promotion of this island. The difference is, as a businessman, the first thing you do, especially in a recession, is you take a look around, a good, hard look around, and you say to yourself, are there places where we are currently spending money where we can shift that away from expenses that don't give us a return and move it over to promoting the island where we will get a return? You know, a perfect example I'll give you. You know, the town spent over $2 million on the Compass Rose Park. Well, 10 years ago, a group from sailing and rowing had come to the town with a vision for a state-of-the-art sailing and rowing center. My son was on the crew team. We used to go to regattas up in Clemson. There would be 3,000 to 5,000 people coming into Clemson every time there was a regatta. There were teams coming down from up north to practice at Clemson because the river froze over in Dartmouth at Thanksgiving. If we had taken the $2 million and put it into the sailing center, we would be getting a return on that investment with incredible numbers of heads and beds during the off season over the course of the last 10 years. Whereas unfortunately, I have to say, over at Compass Rose Park, there's nowhere to park. I can't find the entrance, and honestly, nobody goes there. And having known Charles on a purely personal, Charles Fraser, on a purely personal note, I will say, and being a design-oriented person with experience in landscaping, I don't believe that I don't believe that it's a fitting tribute.
Well, the statue's there, and hopefully some people will see the photographs of it if they don't go. All right, we just have a couple of minutes left. So, what are the key issues? What are, you've already talked about leadership and vision, and are there any other nuts and bolts things you'd like to accomplish?
Well, I'd like to mention the Bluffton Farmers Market. I live on Hilton Head. Diane Fenari, my friend from the Rotary, who was my co-founder of excuse me, of the farmers market. She lives on the island too. Makes sense we would want to do the farmers market on the island. We took the farmers market to the town of Hilton Head, and in 4 meetings over 6 months, we were rebuffed. They actually brought the land management ordinance and made reference to chapter and verse as to why we couldn't do it here. And as a business person, as an entrepreneur, as a connector, as someone who, when he gets hold of a vision, will not let go of it till it's manifest, we took it over the bridge to Bluffton and we made it happen. And we are on pace to do $2.2 million in business that makes local farming economically viable, that brings a wonderful event to downtown, that makes everybody feel like they're connected and part of a community. And to emphasize the importance of the connector, our opening day, Diane Fenari came over to me and she said, I can't believe that we have 500 people plus outside the front door clamoring to get in here, and we didn't exist a week ago. And she said, I am amazed by your connection with the Rotary, your connection with the town, your connection with Beaufort County, your connection with hospitality, your connection with, she said, it's not just the connection, but every connection stepped up and sent out an email blast or put an ad in their newsletter or promoted this in some way or another.
Great.
And she said this never would have happened without you and those connections.
Well, Ed, thank you for sharing your connections and your vision with us, and we wish you all the best in the election on November 2nd.